Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is an earth monster known as Goran. Flying isn't this massive creature's strong suit. Goran is more comfortable walking and making the earth tremble. That way his enemies know he's coming from a distance, and if they're smart, they'll run away. Goran is an earth dragon with an absolutely amazing design in my opinion. I absolutely love all of these new dragon monsters from the Draconian maze. Social Point has really been doing a good job on these monsters. Anyways, let's analyze his stats. Goran has a power of 3,234, which is by no means high. Currently, as of the time I'm making this analysis, there are 18 earth legendary monsters, and this puts him in 14th place. So he's certainly not an attacker. His life is 31,667, and although that appears to be pretty high, in terms of earth monsters, that puts him in 8th place along with the Rude. And yes, although it may not be the highest when we're talking about earth monsters, it still really is a pretty good life. And oddly enough, for a monster that doesn't like to fly and who appears to be really heavy, he's actually pretty fast. His speed is 3,432, which actually makes him the 3rd fastest earth legendary monster, tied with Killer Raptor. So that does give him a competitive advantage over other earth monsters. And to top things off, his trait is Mountain. He has an immunity to stun and freeze. Whereas lots of earth monsters tend to have an immunity to stun only, with a few having tough, Goran's trait is definitely one of the best in the games. And before moving on to analyzing his skills, I do gotta say one thing about Goran. I find that he's a little underestimated, and that's totally acceptable because Monster Legends is a kind of game that favors really two types of monsters. It favors really fast monsters that have immobilizing skills, you know, monsters like Krampus, Kaolic, Frostbite, all these monsters that can immobilize, and it favors attackers, monsters like Barbatos, Voltix, Xyla, monsters that can finish off the enemy really fast. You give speed runes to your deny monsters, you give strength runes to your attackers, and that's really all you need. Monster Legends doesn't really favor supportive monsters, tanky monsters, unless there's something spectacular about them, which in my opinion Goran to some extent does have. There is something unique about him, and it comes down to his trait Mountain along with a skill I'm going to discuss later on. Now your typical Monster Legends game where you just want a deny monster to immobilize and an attacker to finish off the enemy in 1 or 2 turns, Goran doesn't really serve any purpose. However, I do think Goran can be successfully utilized in certain situations, especially in games where the enemy has better runes than you, and that has to do because of Goran's trait and his skill set. So with that being said, I'll try to give an example later on. Let's move on to his skills. His default skills are Earth Rage and Great Goran. Nothing spectacular about those, so let's move on to his special. Terra Draco or Terra Draco, whatever you prefer. Deals heavy earth damage to all enemies, gives a 20% shield to all allies, may daze all targets. By no means an amazing ultimate attack, a low 55 damage, yes it's an AoE, but again this monster has a pretty low power, and it gives you a mini shield which is only a 20% shield, and it dazes the enemy monsters, which I guess is the best part of this skill. The shield is extremely weak. I'm surprised we didn't get like a full shield or a 50% shield even. Nonetheless, in terms of ultimate attacks, I am not a fan of this. Considering this monster's description called him massive, and claiming that he's more comfortable walking and making the earth tremble, you would think his ultimate would be amazing. You would think his ultimate would be something like an AoE Mega Stun, but unfortunately it's just an AoE 55 that gives you a mini shield and dazes. So I really am disappointed on that ultimate. For his skills group 1, we have Stone Hit, Invincible Shell, and Tremors. And the only skill I can say that might be worth running is Tremors. Deals low earth damage to all enemies, 50% chance of blinding all targets, requires cooldown. It's an AoE skill dealing 20 damage, costs 33 stamina with only a 2-turn cooldown. Yes, this skill is only a 50% chance to blind, but later on you're going to see he has a skill that gives your whole team increased accuracy. And when you have a skill that gives you increased accuracy, that also increases the chance of a negative effect landing on the enemy. So it can potentially come in handy. It's really going to be up to you to decide. I'm putting it out there for those of you that might want to consider it, but like always I'll give you guys my opinion on what I think is worth running. Moving on to the skills group 2 skills, we have Lacking View. Deals moderate special damage, may blind target. It targets a single enemy, dealing 40 damage, costs 28 stamina, and it has no cooldown. And this is a 100% chance to blind the enemy monster, which can definitely come in handy. As far as earth monsters are concerned, there's only one earth monster that's immune to blind, and that would be Rockanthium, who is almost never used. There's a few that have tough and a few that have hardened, so there is a chance that blind might not land on some earth monsters, but for the majority of earth monsters they aren't immune to blind, so this is a good negative effect to give them. This is one skill you might want to consider running. We also have Tough Skin. Gives a 40% shield to target, applies 1 random positive effect to target, requires cooldown. So this is for a single ally, it costs 27 stamina, and it has a 2-turn cooldown. And these are the different positive effects you can give your ally, and I'm not the biggest fan of this skill. Yes, you get a 40% shield, which to be honest isn't the highest, and you get 1 random effect. You can get a heal plus 20, a mini shield, a small shield, a medium shield. I don't even know the shield stack. Double damage is probably the nicest thing, energy points if you have no energy. Overall though, there's not too many really good positive effects I would want to give my monster, so tough skin is a skill I don't recommend running. Next we have Earth Energy. Deals low earth damage to all enemies, heals by 30%, requires cooldown. So this is an AoE skill dealing 30 damage, costing 38 stamina with a 3-turn cooldown. And this skill is pretty cool because you heal your life by 30%. And considering this monster does have a pretty tanky life, and if you were to give this monster some life runes, maybe 1 or 2, he's going to be recovering a lot of life. Unfortunately, it does have a pretty high cooldown of 3 turns. Nonetheless, another skill you might want to run. And thus we move into skills group 3, Bated Breath. Deals moderate special damage, may stun target. So this skill targets a single enemy, deals 45 damage, costs 28 stamina, and it has no cooldown, which means you're free to use this skill and try to stun enemy monsters. Now as far as earth monsters are concerned, there are 8 earth monsters who are immune to stun, 9 and 10 if we count Goran and Oros who are immune to stun and freeze, and there's a total of 5 other monsters that have either bulwark, hardened, or tough, so landing stun against an earth monster can be pretty difficult. Nonetheless, you still want to run this skill because there's possibly going to be another legendary monster that you can stun. Another skill Goran has is called Protected by Earth, gives a 75% shield to target, removes all negative status effects, requires cooldown. So you target a single ally, it costs 27 stamina, has only a 2-turn cooldown, you get a big 75% shield, and you remove debuffs, and this is actually the skill that I think gives Goran some potential, especially combined to his mountain trait and to some extent to his good speed. So let me just talk about his final skill and then we'll come back to Protected by Earth. Concentration of Power. Deals low earth damage to all enemies, may give precision to all allies, requires cooldown. So this is an AoE that deals 30 damage, costs 35 stamina, has a 3-turn cooldown, and it gives your whole team precision, which can definitely come in handy. And it's because of concentration of power that I did say it might be worth running Tremors, because then you'd also have an AoE blind. If you start off with concentration of power and then do Tremors, chances are blind will be hitting more often than it'll be missing. But that's ultimately up for you to decide. For me personally, the best skill set is Protected by Earth, Bated Breath, Lacking View, Earth Energy. Earth Energy allows you to do an AoE while recovering 30% of your life. Lacking View lets you blind an enemy monster, thus reducing their accuracy. Bated Breath is a 0 cooldown stun, so you can immobilize whichever monster isn't immune to stun, and Protected by Earth gives your ally a big shield while removing debuffs. So in order to understand why I think Goran is a little underestimated, you first need to understand what monsters are faster than Goran, particularly in the water category, because water monsters tend to have freeze skills. The only water monsters that are faster than Goran are Blob, Frostwrath, Anton, Cabinfish, and Sphereness has the exact same speed as Goran. With the exception of Blob and Anton, all of those monsters have an AoE freeze skill, while Cabinfish not only has an AoE freeze, he also has an AoE stun. So as far as team war goes, if you're ever put in a position where the enemy has one of those water monsters, or really any water monster, where you know for a fact that they are faster than you, where you don't have any single water monster that can deny them before they can deny you, then I think Goran is a really optimal strategic choice to use. So let's just think about a team wars involving common, earth, and water. And let's say on defense, the enemy has a Cabinfish. And let's say that Cabinfish is running 3 level 6 speed runes. And then for earth, they'll probably have an attacker, or maybe they'll have a tank like Oros. And then let's say that you only have access to level 5 speed runes. And you've done the math and you've calculated that the first turn is going to go to Cabinfish. You don't have a water monster that can go before him. You have a General Thetis, but a General Thetis with 3 level 5 speed runes is not faster than a Cabinfish with 3 level 6 speed runes. Yes, General Thetis has tough and there's a chance you might not get frozen or stunned by Cabinfish, but it's still too much of a risk. So instead of running General Thetis, you decide you're going to run a water attacker, someone like Blob or any other water attacker, and for your earth monster you're going to run Goran. And as far as runes go, I would probably give him 2 speed runes and a life rune, maybe 1 speed, 1 team speed, and a life, maybe even 1 life, 1 strength, 1 speed, but I'm really gravitating towards 2 speed and a life rune. Anyways, the enemy Cabinfish goes, and whether it does AoE freeze or AoE stun, that doesn't really matter too much, because Goran has Mountain, so regardless of what the skill Cabinfish does, you're not going to be frozen and you're going to be stunned. Your ally on the other hand, your Blob, he is going to be frozen or stunned because he has Energized. Well, then it's going to move to Goran's turn, and because Goran has Protected by Earth, he's going to give your Blob a big shield, and he's going to be removing debuffs. And your Blob is probably going to be running 2 strength runes and a speed rune, and maybe all 3 strength runes. So then it's going to go either to your attacker or your enemy's attacker. If it's your enemy's attacker, fortunately for you, your Blob has a big shield. If he attacks Goran, that's fine because Goran is already extremely tanky. If instead of the enemy attacker attacking first, it goes over to Blob, Blob is not only powerful, he also has stamina drain skills. So he can either do his 100% stamina drain on the enemy attacker, or he can do it on the enemy Cabinfish, and thus the likelihood of you winning that match is higher than it would have been if you would have tried to use any other water monster, knowing that the enemy's Cabinfish is too fast and that the enemy's Cabinfish could potentially deny you first. So you really have to get strategic with Goran. And if you're thinking to yourself, okay Armor, well that's only one case, Goran still isn't that good. Well, what about if it's a team wars involving Dark and Earth? It's actually a very similar thing. thing. Most people will tend to run a Krampus on defense because Krampus has the fastest speed of all Deny monsters and he has an AoE freeze, and currently no Dark monster is immune to freeze. So yes, even though Dark has an elemental advantage against Earth, luckily for us, Krampus only has one Dark attack that most people tend to run, and that is the AoE freeze skill. Aside from that, he has the Burning and Poison skill that also apply 2 extra random negative effects and a single freeze skill. So then we find ourselves in a very similar situation. Say that the enemy Krampus is way too fast for us and there's no way we can deny him before he can deny us. Well, for your Earth monster you can put Goran. For your Dark monster you can use any Dark attacker, maybe a Dark monster that has AoE stun like Mommy, Will Racerface, Harusami, or maybe a really strong Dark attacker like Barbatos. If the enemy Krampus goes first and does his AoE freeze skill, Goran is going to be immune to the freeze, and then you can use Protected by Earth once again on your attacker, who will most likely be frozen because he got hit by freezing shadows, and then your Dark monster is able to wreak havoc on the enemy team, which Krampus isn't immune to. Or if it's an attacker like Barbatos, you can do your Blood Covenant skill, you can give yourself double damage and then use Hellfire and potentially wipe out Barbatos and the enemy attacker. So I really do think Goran is not to be underestimated. Yes, if you have better speedruns than your opponent on your Deny monster, there's no reason to use Goran, but in those situations where you have to be strategic, I think Goran can definitely come in handy, and that's why I'm going to go as far as to say he's one of the better Earth monsters we have in the game. Lots of players, myself included, who keep this game entirely free to play, don't have the luxury of having really high level runes that we can always for sure be faster than the opponent, so we have to rely on strategy a lot, and I think Goran is definitely the monster for that. So once again, my recommended skill set for Goran would be Protected by Earth, Bated Breath, Lacking View, Earth Energy. And with all that being said, that is going to conclude my analysis on Goran. I really want to know what you guys think about this monster. Let me know if I was able to change your perspective. So I'd really like to know what you guys think. Do you agree with me or do you disagree with me, and also why? Like always, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Also let me know who you want me to analyze next. I hope everyone has a great amazing day or a great amazing night. Remember to dream big and pursue your passions.